so present a greater number of the said caucus. My name is Andy Apiakubi, and I am only here as spokesperson for the majority group, without more. We have had occasions to defend allegations of conflict of interest, lack of confidence, trust against the leadership of our finance ministry. The recent developments within our economy are of great concern to the greater majority of members of our caucus and our constituents. We have made our grave concern to the President through the parliamentary leadership and the leadership of the party without any positive response. We are by this medium communicating our strong desire that the President change the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State in the Finance Ministry without further delay in order to restore hope into the financial sector and reverse the downward trend in the growth of the economy. The summary of our concerns leads to a plea that the Minister of Finance, Honorable Kenneth Ofori-Atta, and the Minister of State of the Ministry of Finance, Honorable Charles Edubuahi, be removed from office. We pray that this prayer will be carried to the presidency. We thank you very much for showing concern to us.
And the video you just watched is that of over 80 NPP members of parliament, majority side, who called on His Excellency the President, Nana Akufo-Addo, to either sack, dismiss, or cause the finance minister to resign as finance minister of our beloved nation, Ghana. The issues about the economy, known to all of us, the skyrocketing prices at the markets, goods and services all up in the sky, the value of the money we hold in our hands devalued as a result of the bad performance of the Ghanaian cedi against other forex. We are also thinking presently about the inflation in the country, hovering over 37% as we speak now. A dollar is going for around 15.3%, 15.3 cedis as we speak now. There are several other issues we can talk about. People's businesses that are collapsing as a result of their inability to even break even, not to talk of sustaining their businesses. And so virtually every Ghanaian is worried. Each and every day you get to the market, there are different prices for the same commodity because you'll be told the dollar is going up and up. The Finance Ministry and the Bank of Ghana have taken steps to ensure that we don't get to this point, but they are not yielding the results we look forward to. And so there is still so much agitation. Now, what were these MPs looking out for, and what were they clamoring for? They say if the finance minister has supervised the poor performance of the cedi, if the finance minister has supervised the inflation in the country, the job situation in the country, then he must go. But they are not the only people who have called for the resignation of the finance minister. If we will cast our minds back, a whole former chief of staff under an NPP government, President Kufuor's government, Mr. Kojo Pianim, has called for the finance minister to dutifully resign. Journalists in this country have called for his resignation. A former general secretary of the party has called for his resignation. So, have the minority in parliament also called for the resignation of the finance minister? The finance minister says, no, I ain't going nowhere. President says, I still have confidence in the finance minister. And so tonight, we are talking about the finance minister, his sacking or resignation. Uncharted territories we find ourselves in tonight. Because we asked a simple question, what would it mean for us if the finance minister were to resign or were to be sacked today? Remember, he's the individual who is leading the conversation with the IMF in terms of the program we are drawing. Would a new person be able to understand the books so as to lead us on a path that would ensure we get the IMF bailout we are looking out for? Would a new finance minister be able to build the confidence to ensure that international partners and investors would have confidence in the economy? Because people are suggesting that the moment finance minister is not there, Kenneth Ofori-Atta, investors may have some confidence in our economy and invest in it, and that there's going to be a dramatic change in the situation of our country. Remember, Guta just recently put down their tools and close their stores. And so we want to understand the dynamics of the situation, because in here we are talking the economy, we are talking governance, we're talking politics, because it has to do with members of parliament who have told His Excellency the President that until the finance minister is removed, no government business that will come on the floor of parliament would have their attention. What does this mean? Even the budget, 2023 budget, would not have the attention. And that would mean that appropriation would not happen, and so would government business halt. What happens to His Excellency the President, who has about 2 more years to go? If he sees his power now in his position that the finance minister must not go, what happens to him? Would he have lost his place as the man leading the party now? These are all conversations we're going to be having tonight on the show. And so gladly, I want to introduce you to my guests as we begin the conversation this evening on ETV. Reminding you that the show is live on Nissim 95.9, 100.1, and also live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And so you can follow the conversation live on Facebook and share your thoughts and your views with us tonight on the show. And so we are joined this evening by Professor Edward Brenya, who is a History and Political Science Department Head, KNUST. Dr. Joseph Obin joins us. He's the president of GUTA, and Dr. Edusa Akode will be joining us as well. So, with my own brother, Christian Techi Jan, also join us via phone, even as we interrogate the issues. And so, gentlemen, good evening, and thanks so much for joining us.
Good evening.
All right, so I would like to start with you, Dr. Joseph Obin. The news that the majority side in Parliament are asking for the finance minister to resign, or the president must fire him. How did you receive this news?
Yeah. We talked to our issues, and that's the most important things that we focus on, and that the economy is suffering. So to the extent that people will hear our suffering, the fact that we close our shops, and that the whole majority group will call for the resignation of a finance minister, means that the closure of shops has gotten that far. These are some of the results when we do some of these things. And so for us, we were not the appointing authorities. We did not do the evaluation for them. It is the same parliament who did the evaluation. But whatever is going on is consistent with what the president or the government have been saying, that this is global phenomenon. If it is a global phenomenon, then the call for the resignation is inconsistent with what is going on in other jurisdictions. You know that a whole UK has gotten 2 president change within a short period of time, including their finance ministry. So then, if we say that is a global phenomenon, then of course, what is happening in other jurisdictions is prone to happen here, and that's what we've started seeing here. And so it is not very strange that this thing should happen. But for us, we do not know how to appoint, and we do not know how to fire. What we know best is to articulate our programs, and then people might do their inferences to see whether the managers are doing right or wrong. So that's what I can say to that.
Considering the recent concerns you raised, just this morning we spoke on the Happy Morning Show. There was a concerns about the benchmark value and the fact that the GRA is being forced to increase it. Is this good news for GUTA?
No, we have to revert to the transactional value. That's it. There's nothing like benchmark valuation system in the WTO system. So that one is not fair. And it's going to provoke another agitation, which might not augur well for the nation. We want the peace. At this time when we are suffering this much, we should not be compounded with these issues. benchmark value is just a referring valuation system that they refer to cross-check our transactional value. And now we've made it that it is an authentic valuation for importers, which is not fair. You use it to reference, it's a reference values. And now we've let it be that it is the authentic valuation system, which is not legitimate. So we should revert to the transactional value system. Yeah.
What I meant was, do you as Guta see the call by the majority side in Parliament for the President to dismiss the Finance Minister as good news, considering all these arguments you just made a few seconds ago?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that whatever the call is consistent to what is happening globally. And if we have a problem and then we are not able to solve it, we've seen that other jurisdictions, they are changing. So in that regard, I would say that is consistent with what is happening in global. But for us, we do not know how to appoint and dismiss. And so what we know is to complain if we have a problem. And now we have a serious problem. And so if the problem points to the finance ministry and there will be changes and it will help us, so be it.
Seeing where we are and the performance of the city.
Please, I couldn't hear from the beginning.
I'm saying that, do you believe in the capacity of the finance minister to redeem himself and then to redeem the Ghanaian economy as well?
The honor lies on him and the government.
But do you believe that he can do so?
Yeah. How can I assess? If you look at what is happening now, then how can I say I believe? So, because there's no end in sight. If we've made a serious pronouncement about how we are going to solve this problem, if we have very articulated our fiscal policies, that we are going policies that we are going to do to revive the whole trend, then of course it's inspiring hope. But now I cannot pinpoint on something for me to use as an indicator to mark him positively or negatively. And so that's how I find it difficult to say yes or no to this. But if we look at the global trends, and then if somebody is not delivering, I've seen so many countries firing. And for that, then it is consistent with the demands of these MPs.
Let me speak to Professor Brenya and pick his thoughts, because this is also political as well. The President of the nation says, I believe in the finance ministry or the finance minister. His own members of parliament virtually threaten him that if you don't fire the finance minister, your business in parliament will stall. What does this say about the relationship between the presidency and then parliament? Prof, it's good to have you on the show.
Good evening, and good evening to the able listeners of your show. And let me say that to your question, I want to say that when I heard the call, I, for once, felt that if there's anything called representation in Ghana, then I think this is the time that Parliament is reasserting itself as an alternative to the presidency without recourse to the fear that they might lose some benefits that they could get from the executives. As I listened to the members of Parliament, their case, they talked about the fact that they had spoken to their constituents, and their constituents are not happy about what is going on. And therefore, more than close to about 60% of the members in majority are now calling their own president, which has never been the case. We've always seen the case with the minority calling for members of their government to leave. But this time around, it is the majority concurring with what is already known in Ghana, even though the president of Ghana still does not, I don't know what has happened within the period that this call has been made, whether it's changed anything in the mind of the president about the reality that is so clear that everybody can see, and yet only the president of Ghana is not able to see about the fact that the things that are happening in Ghana at the moment is unbearable. I listened to the president at Otek FM when he says that when Ghanaians are calling for a change in the members of his, the ministers he has appointed, that they behave as if he is not living in Ghana, that he's also in Ghana and he feels and see what is going on. I was shocked because I wasn't really sure if the president was really seeing what is going on. Two, it is also attesting to the fact that all the lies that we've been told over the years about the fact that the inflation and the hardship in Ghana is caused by global issues, i.e. the Russian, Ukraine, and the coronavirus. It is attesting to the fact and supporting the evidence espoused by the IMF that our problem, the inflation that we are facing in Ghana, is domestic driven, and the World Bank telling us that food prices are very high in Ghana, and we are among about the third in sub-Saharan Africa. I think that, by and large, what we need to bear in mind is that members of parliament were elected to represent their constituents. And if their constituents are worried and the president was equally elected to sort of protect and promote the welfare of Ghanaians, is not seeing it. The parliamentarians are exercising their constitutional rights by calling on the president to fire the finance minister. And I think that it shouldn't just be Honorable Kenneth Foriata and Honorable Charles Edubuain. No, the president put in place a so-called economic management team. What we are facing right now is not just the fiscal policy. The monetary policy is also not doing well. And therefore, the president of Bank of Ghana should also be somewhere to look at. I feel strongly that the call is in the right direction. And I'm hoping that these members of parliament who are making the call will not just be throwing dust in the eyes of Ghanaians, but they will walk the talk.
Now, if you paid attention to that press conference, conspicuously missing in the folks represented, I mean the members of parliament, we didn't see any of the key figures, especially the leadership of the majority side in parliament. What does this mean for you, watching them? Could this necessarily have the support of the leadership of the majority side?
Well, yes, of course, we didn't see them. But I think that the number that presented themselves is more than enough to force the government to act. Because parliament is about voting. Bear in mind, we came to this parliament with about just one different in votes. And therefore, if about 80 out of your members are saying that if you don't fire him, we will not support him, what it means is that any motion that is put on the floor of parliament for vote, government is going to lose. So whether or not the leadership are in support or they are not, I don't think it really matters here. The important thing is that majority of the members of parliament of the ruling government are telling the government that things are not right and the government needs to set up.
Now, the authority of the president, which has been questioned by these 80 members of parliament on the majority side, post this press conference, what would it mean for the president's control over his members in parliament and over the party as well?
I think that the whipping system, as we can see, per this press conference, means that the whipping system is not working well. And of course, you don't expect it to work well. When people are feeling, it's not just us. It's not just the majority citizen who are feeling this. The members of parliament are feeling it. Every Ghanaian is feeling the hardship. You go to the pump today, you buy your fuel, and the next time you're going back, raise the same amount of money, and you can't get anything out of it. You go to the market, the same money that you might have used to buy a goods or commodity, you go back, you can purchase even about half of it. Everybody is feeling it. And I believe strongly that as a political party, and more so as individuals who are going to be elected in the next election, one, they are acting as delegates, showing the fact that they have responsibility to represent their constituents. I feel strongly that the decision taken by the president to the call by these members of parliament will determine the authority of the president and the authority of the majority leadership in parliament.
Prof, you hold in a second for me. Let me take the perspectives of my brother Christian as well on this matter, and that has to do with the economic side. Christian, it's good to have you on the show this evening. So my question is, we are trying to get the IMF to support us to stabilize our economy. What does that mean for this process we have already commenced, seeing that the finance minister has been the one who's been leading the charge in these negotiations?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sammy. Before I go to the substantive question, let me give a bit of a background to all of these happenings. If you check Ghana's history, after the election, somewhere 2017 to 2019, we're experiencing GDP growth average of about 7%. And then if you check for the last year, that is 2022, the very first quarter, we grew only by 3.3%, and that is very, very abysmal. If you also check the conditions that are happening in the nation, fuel prices are soaring, utility consumers started paying about 28, 29% on electricity. They also started paying about 20% on water. So all of these things have put us in a situation where things have become very unbearable. Treasury bills, we know, are doing over 30%. Inflation is about 37%. And if you look at the Bank of Ghana policy rate that was reviewed of about 24%, that means the cost of borrowing also is going to get higher or more expensive. Once that happens, operational costs also grows, and then goods actually become very expensive. No wonder we are experiencing, I would say, a mini hyperinflation as we are experiencing now of about 37%. And we are also in a situation where we are unable to go to the capital market to borrow because of downgrades that we have experienced from the credit rating agencies, that includes Fitch, Moody's, and what have you. And we see default looming on us, and it also appears quite probable. Our monetary and fiscal landscape are in shambles, and we don't seem to see any light at the end of the tunnel, and so things are very gloomy. In this perspective, if you look at who has superimposed all of these things that I've mentioned, it is the finance ministry and the finance minister for that matter. Though he's a member of the economic management team, the buck actually stops at his doorstep. With the negotiation that has commenced with IMF, I think it's not between the IMF and Ken Ofori-Atta or IMF and Addo. It's about IMF and the government of Ghana. The NPP prides themselves with having the men. So I should believe that they have the men, even in the absence of Addo and Ken. They should be able to find some men that can continue the process. I mean, governance is about process and business continuity. So we cannot say if Ken is not there today, the negotiations are going to stall. Mind you, Ken does not go alone. He goes in a team. So there are definitely some other team members who have acquainted themselves with the process or the process flow where they've gotten to so far. And so it shouldn't be difficult if there is a replacement for Ken to going into the negotiation with the IMF to find a lasting solution to the economic turmoil that Ghana finds itself.
Now, let's be fair. You are a finance economics person. When it comes to the currency and its performance, you'd agree with me that falls within the domain of the Bank of Ghana. When it comes to the issue about inflation, for which we have seen the Bank of Ghana trying very hard to use the monetary policy rate, which right now is pegged around 24.5%, you agree with me this falls within the domain of the Bank of Ghana. Why are we calling for the head of the finance minister when the governor of the Bank of Ghana is at post and he is responsible for most of these macroeconomic indicators we are talking about?
Yes, the Bank of Ghana is actually supposed to be an independent body. But Sammy, you and I will agree that definitely they pay allegiance to the government in power. And when we talk about the ministry, the Finance and Economic Planning Ministry, it is Ken who is at the helm of the affairs. So whatever the Bank of Ghana does dovetails into the policies or the vision of the Economic Planning and Finance Ministry. So it will be very difficult to isolate both institutions or to isolate both agencies. Whatever Bank of Ghana does actually dovetails into economic planning and the finance ministry. So they are both culpable, but for me, the buck actually stops at the finance ministry, and therefore Ken has to pay for it.
You made a brilliant point. Sorry, go ahead, proceed.
Yeah, I also believe that it is important that sometimes we look at nobody is actually a repository of knowledge. And so when sometimes you've tried as much as you can and the results are not coming, I believe in freshening up things. You know, sometimes it's a human institution. For all you know, there are human resource issues that are available. From the grapevine, we've heard about some staff who are actually coming to staff of data bank that are at the finance ministry that has become a bit of issues. There are some staff at the Bank of Ghana that has become a bit of issue. I understand there is some bit of friction between the Bank of Ghana and the Economic Planning Ministry, the Economic Management team. There are issues. There are a lot of issues, which sometimes borders on human resources. So for me, having a fresh person to come in, whether at the helm of affairs at the Bank of Ghana or at the Finance Ministry, it will give a fresh breath to the whole system, where if indeed the human resource challenges or issues as people are purporting is anything to go by, there's a fresh person that is coming in. So all of those issues will be nipped in the bud and they'll be able to pick up the pieces and then to forge ahead to ensure that Ghana regains its position as an economic powerhouse in the sub-region.
Now, you made a brilliant point when I asked the question about, you know, the IMF, you know, conversation, the meetings that are ongoing. And your point was that it wasn't just Ken who goes for these IMF meetings and that the other individuals, the vice president is part of it, the governor of the Bank of Ghana, and several other members who are part of it. And so it brings us to the question of what would the replacement of Ken necessarily translate into, seeing that these individuals will still be a part of the economic management team? The vice president is there, he heads the economic management team. The governor of the Bank of Ghana will still be there. There are other members who will still be there. So taking away Ken alone, what necessarily would it change?
Samuel, let me draw attention to one critical issue here. With the economic indicators, with the inflation and all those ones, we can have another conversation around it. But let me draw attention to the FX market.
Okay.
What we are experiencing now, we all know that the Ghana cedi is actually very much undervalued in the last 1 month. And what is being occasion to this circumstance is about speculation. People are running after dollar because they feel or believe the system is not working. There is something fundamentally wrong with our economic system. Inflation is high, utilities are high, and so people are losing confidence in our economy. And so that is occasioned by the speculation, and therefore people are going after these dollars. One thing that is critical in the FX markets with regards to speculation is the fact that when the wrong person is at the helm of affairs, it fuels the speculation for people who do not have confidence in the system to continue to go after the dollar. If someone comes in now, it could be just anybody. But anyone comes in, people who have lost confidence in Ken will go back to say, okay, we have a fresh person. He has a fresh new ideas that are coming on board. So I'm sure things will begin to get better. By that mentality alone, whatever the person is holding in terms of the effects, the person will begin to release it. Once you begin to release yours, he begins to release his, and she begins to release hers. Then all those speculations begins to get siphoned out of the market, and therefore the dollar begins to flow back into the system, and therefore people will become confident. Once anybody needs USD for any advance payment or a trade transaction, the dollar is available, and so we'll begin to see a decline in the soaring of the dollar against the cedi. So speculation is key here, and it's very important that we send a clear signal or a message across the FX market for people to regain confidence, or for people to have confidence in the economic system, and they will stop chasing after the dollar, and we'll get back to our normal times where cedi was actually performing better in the region of about 6 or 7 Ghana cedis. So I think once news comes in, we should be fine. People should be comfortable and confident enough to just no longer go after the USD.
It's interesting, the example you're giving us and the logic behind the point you're making about changing the leadership of the finance ministry. But I would have thought that we would learn lessons from the UK situation where, you know, with the removal of Boris Johnson, Liz Truss coming in with her finance minister who resigned after who had to be fired after a few weeks of being in service, and the hype that was given as to his expertise and how he was going to transform the UK, economy. Truss herself also left the scene. Can't or shouldn't this be basis enough for us to hasten slowly that a change does not necessarily translate into expectations and hopes?
Same, the Conservatives actually have been in turmoils, and that alone is fueling a lot of ideas in the English economy. Because if you look at the former Prime Minister, the issues that he had, how he exited office, the new one coming in, our own Prez Akufo-Addo who came in as the Chancellor for the Exchequers, and all of those things happening. They haven't been stable. The party itself is in turmoil, and so the system is actually reacting to those at the helm of affairs, not just Prez Akufo-Addo who was removed, or Ortiz who was also removed. It's about the system where over a period, things haven't really been working that well. So the UK's situation is quite different from ours. With the UK situation, people do not have confidence in the Conservative Party. There's been calls that there should even be fresh elections that are run for people to determine whether they still want to have the Conservatives or they want to go with the other party. So our situations are quite different. The Conservatives are actually in turmoil. So nothing, whether they bring Mr. A or Mrs. B, things are not happening for them because the issue has actually got to do with the political party.
Chris, we'll have to go for a short breather. When we come back, there are still certain questions we need to attempt to answer before the show comes to an end at 9. I encourage you to stay with us. You can share your thoughts with us on our Facebook wall, ETV Ghana, and I'll gladly read them. If you're monitoring us live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1 as well, you can send your comments coming through and then I'll read them. And welcome back to Fact Sheets live on ETV, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1. We're excited to have you with us, even as we try to look at the various perspectives and angles to the call by over 80 of majority members in Parliament for the President to sack the Finance Minister. From the economic point of view, from the governance point of view, from the political point of view, and the business point of view. Let me rightly say, commerce point of view. Now, I am going to Professor Brenya for a comment. And this comment is based upon a statement which is coming from the New Patriotic Party, dated October 25th. And it says, press conference by some members of parliament and other related matters. Now, statement reads, the National Executive Body of the New Patriotic Party has taken notice of a press conference held on Tuesday, October 25, 2022, by some members of the Majority Caucus of Parliament demanding, amongst others, the immediate resignation or dismissal of Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, Minister for Finance, Honorable Charles Edu-Boahen, Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, respectively. In view of the above development, the leadership of the party is currently engaging government as well as the parliamentary group and urges all stakeholders to remain calm as it seeks to amicably resolve the impasse. The leadership of the party herein reiterates its commitment to at all times engage government on issues of utmost interest and concern to the party, government and the citizenry. May God bless our homeland Ghana and make the New Patriotic Party great and strong. Signed by the national chair of the party. Prof, what do you get out of this statement from the NPP as a political party?
It is very interesting. It's very interesting that the leadership of the New Patriotic Party will work up to this point for some members of their own party who, in a way, has shown how weak the party is at the moment, at least the way that the party is able to equip its members alone in parliament to give that statement. But it is very necessary because at the end of the day, the party is looking up to, as they say, break the eight. And therefore, for them to be able to take advantage or to be seen to even have the ability to contest in the 2024 election, it is expected that the leadership will put up a statement like this. But I feel strongly that the statement is not enough. The leadership needs to make Ghanaians aware that the call for the removal of the finance minister is something that is realistic. Ghanaians are suffering. The sort of, for choice of words, that the sort of propaganda that was done going to the 2016 election and the statement that has been made about having the men at this point in time is being questionable, and the NPP as a political party should look beyond President Akufo-Addo, who seems to have been satisfied with the fact that he's had his second term, and really, for me, not to be seen to be governing at this point in time. It is important that the leadership act to the call for the president to sit up and act, because for me, I don't see governance and I don't see Akufo-Addo being in control as the president of Ghana at the moment.
Now, before I end with you, I'm trying to establish the connect between a political party and two arms of government. The executive, which is independent, and then the legislature, which is also independent. What's the connect? What's the business of the party in the affairs of these two independent arms of government as well?
The political party put up a candidate for president. The political party put up candidates for members of parliament. The president, the political party put up a manifesto which translates into the policies of the day for which the members of parliament would have to pass into law so that it can be implemented by the executive. So if we are looking from the structures and we are seeing the executive acts independent from the legislature, i.e. parliament, the political party becomes the connecting factor.
Okay.
Because for the political party to be able to achieve its manifesto item that translates into policies and to get them passed and be implemented well, it must be seen to be working with both the executive and the legislature, which the political party gave birth to. So at this point in time, it's very necessary that they come in to address any impasse that is occurring between the executive and the legislature. Bear in mind, we have a hybrid system.
We have a hybrid system where majority of those that are in parliament are also part of the executive. And therefore, it becomes very difficult. That has been the reason why, as my brother was comparing, Chris, as you look at the British Parliament, which is purely a parliament that is fueled by the legislature, it is somewhat different when you come to the presidential, the US system. But for us, we combine the two. And sometimes it gives the executive, in the mind of many people, more authority than parliament. But this time around, parliament is accepting its constitutional powers. And I want parliament to move even beyond the threats of sort of not doing government business, but want the president that should the president fail to fire Ken Ofori-Atta and those that are in the helm of affairs of the economy, that they would actually impeach the president. I think that is when Parliament would have shown to the executive that they are partners, they are equal in terms of the structures of government, and that they are not subservient to the executive.
Thank you, Prof, for your submission. Quickly, let me just jump to Dr. Joseph Obeng. Doc, now, what is running through my mind is, what would be the first three things that you would expect that if the president should concede and fire the finance minister, any other person who replaces Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta, the first three things you'd expect that he would tackle immediately? Hello, Doc. All right, it looks like we're having a little challenge with the connection of Dr. Joseph Obeng. And so let me just quickly jump to Christian and see if I can ask him similar question. I know that being an economics person, his focus is going to go on inflation and then, you know, the monetary policy rate and co. But Chris, immediately, what comes to mind if there's a new person at the helm of affairs tomorrow, God willing?
Yes, I think that will breathe a new energy into the system. Those who are speculating and are chasing after the dollar, it is going to halt, and therefore calmness will be restored in the system. People will begin to have confidence in the Ghanaian economy, and they will stop chasing after the dollar. If we are unable to, what I see here, Sammy, is a disconnect between government and then the party. If we are unable to solve this impasse, the main risk to the outlook will further intensify, and the macro vulnerabilities, such as the unexpected materialization of contingent liabilities in the economy, are actually going to crystallize. And inflation expectation, I mean, it will continue to go high. We are already getting to hyperinflation stages. Debt sustainability could also be threatened, and insufficient access to the financing markets. Now there's already talk of a sizable domestic debt rollover or restructure. People call it a haircut of a sort. And all of these will put pressure on the already elevated domestic interest rates. And accommodating these large needs may crowd out all the private sector investments, and it will test the limit of the domestic financial sector's appetite for the sovereign debt. So if we are not careful, we'll just be on the road to recession. And my personal position is that we don't need to get to that stage. It needs to be addressed as early as possible, because all of these happenings goes to fuel more speculation, and people will continue to be unsettled and go after the dollar. So these things need to be settled. This impasse needs to be settled once and for all. Then confidence will be restored into the system, and everybody can go on about his economic activity or economic duty.
It's interesting that you keep hammering the point that you'd expect that a change in the leadership at the finance ministry is going to bolster hope within the system. But here is the case. The people who are at the moment holding our hands, ensuring that there is fiscal discipline, and then in the long run we're able to achieve fiscal space in order for us to do more business with our investors, are telling you that kindly use the monetary policy rate, but carefully. So far, it's around, I believe, let's say 24.5. If there's a slight upward adjustment to the monetary policy rate, we know how much it's going to impact on the banks and how the banks is also going to translate that into the businessmen who will be borrowing from these banks. These are textbook knowledge that we all know that with the IMF in the equation, any finance minister who is at the helm of affairs will be expecting to take or chart this course. So what difference would happen?
Yes, let me draw attention to this thing. You see, when monetary policy rates are always very high, it impacts on borrowings. With the banks, you know, it also has got a ripple effect on the treasury rates. So now treasury rates are about 30%. The banks will be doing a margin of minimum about 5%, meaning cost of borrowing will be around 35%. That is quite expensive. As a rational economic agent, as the businessman is, that's assuming his profit margin is also 5%, that adds up to about 40%. Operational cost hasn't even been added. Operational cost, let's say an additional 10%, that takes us to about 50%. As a rational economic agent, all of these costs will be placed on the costs of the goods and services, and therefore the consumer will be the person that will ultimately be paying for it. And that leads to higher prices of goods and services. And that in economics, we know it is high inflation. So I don't see how and why BOD will be targeting inflation, higher inflation, with, you know, upping monetary policy rates. The stage where we've gotten to, we don't need these things. It is not working. We need to review. As you rightly said, that is what the textbook will tell you. But then the same textbook will also tell you that as you increase the monetary policy rates, cost of borrowing becomes higher, definitely prices of goods and services also get higher. So we need to deviate from or move away from this situation where we always have to review monetary policy rates upwards in our bid to reduce inflation. It doesn't work out that way. We need a fresh person to come in to tweak certain things, you know, adjust to suit our situation in Ghana, and I'm sure we'll be able to surmount this economic challenge.
All right, let me try and see if I can get Dr. Joseph Obin and then pick his final comments on this matter. Doc, are you back with us, sir? All right, it looks like we're still having a challenge with Doc's line, but unfortunately as well, we have exhausted our time this evening, and so I would like to thank Professor Brenya, KNUST Department of History, for making time to join us this evening. It's been very, very, you know, informative conversation with the angles that he has given us on the show. Prof, thank you so much. I'm hoping that tomorrow, God willing, on the morning show, you make time for us. All right. So that's Professor Edward Brenya, History and Political Science Department, KNUST. We're also joined via Zoom by Dr. Joseph Obin, who is the President GUTA, and we're expecting to speak to Dr. Edu Sarkodie, but unfortunately that did not happen. We spoke to our friend and brother, who is a family member on the show, Christian Techijan, who is an economist, to also throw more light on these issues. But you see, the conversation is not ending now. It's going to be continued tomorrow because there are several angles we need to take a look at, and that will be on the Happy Morning Show tomorrow, God willing, at 5:30 a.m. sharp. I encourage you to tune into the Happy Morning Show on ATV Ghana on Happy 98.9 FM, Nissim 95.9, and 100.1. Expect that we'll interrogate the issues on the Happy Morning Show tomorrow morning. On behalf of the production team, I say have a pleasant evening.